infamous, I can say this, the former report. I'm your host for today, Dr. Willard Smith, sitting in for my good friend and originator of this show, Dr. Keith A. Farmer. I think he's going to join us for just a few moments as he is en route traveling. And I'm going to be sitting in today discussing with you a very, very interesting topic. Joining me shortly will be a few other hosts, or shall I say a couple other hosts that will also chime in on this wonderful subject that I think you're going to get a lot out of today. And while we're talking about, let's get started talking about the subject. So here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about what are the alternatives. Now, you might say, what are the alternatives to what? And that is a very good question that I'm about to answer for you. Because today, we're going to talk about the alternative to the 4 relationship types in this world. That is, or they are, pardon me, marriage, divorce, widow, or single. What are the alternatives for those? Marriage, divorce, widow, or being single. If you're like me, you know somebody who is in one of those situations or who has been in one of those situations and who perhaps maybe someone is getting ready to go into one of those situations. So we're going to talk about it. Today we're talking to you on several different platforms. So if I'm not looking directly at your screen, don't let that bother you. I'm talking to you from WCEG Network as well, which is our main screen on today. So let's get into it. We're going to talk about the alternative for marriage, divorce, widow, and single. I think we got something for everybody today. And you know what? I can speak from personal experience because I've been in at least, well, actually, I've been in all of those: married, divorced, single, and widowed. So I can talk about those. Oh, there he is, the original founder of this great show, The Farm Report, Bishop Dr. Keith Farmer himself. Greetings, Dr. Farmer.
Man, I tell you what, the way the introduction sounds, I need to write you a check. I'll go with me wherever I go. Listen, you got a great topic today. What are the alternatives? I can't wait to hear what's the alternative to being a widow, or what's the alternative to being married. I guess the alternative is divorce. And if it's not divorce, single. I mean, it's just so many things that can be discussed in this, and many people watching us. And when you get through the topic, just talk about you being the power couple across this nation. You and your lovely wife, Dr. Karen, which recognized across the nation as a power couple when it comes to marriage. I think people need to give some tidbits today as relates to sustaining the relationship, whether you're married, single, divorced, or widow. What do you do in those areas? I've seen you married. I saw you single, and I've seen you widowed. So you're the right person to give this today. So I'm standing by. If y'all don't see my face, I'm on, but I'm gonna be listening and comment at the same time. So answer those questions. Tell us what should we be doing, especially those folks that think about getting married. Should they think twice, or what should they do?
You didn't ask me that. No indictment on my wife, though. I laugh because you know, as a pastor and a counselor, I hear people all the time talk about all of those, the married, the divorced, the widow, and being single. And of course, I mean, you know, you and I both we're in the same boat with that, so we've experienced it, you know. And you know, there's some people. Let's talk about the first one. Let's start. All of them. So one of them, I don't know which one to start with. So I'm going to start with those single. Now, single people. You have people who have all different kinds of thoughts on that, and I know that you have heard the commentary from what's the comedian name? Corey Holcomb. Corey Holcomb, the comedian, and I'm not quoting him, I'm paraphrasing him, said that this is not the time for single people to get married. He said because for the most part, men lose half of their whatever they accomplished over the years. And I'm not saying I'm agreeing with him at all, so please don't think that I'm just kind of throwing out there what he said. However, I do have to acknowledge that we do live in a different day and time, and it is a lot more difficult now than it was in the past for people to want to get married for a lot of different reasons. One, what used to be sacred is no longer sacred. I mean, let's just think about it. There's so many one-night stands going on now that it's just ridiculous. ridiculous. And so then what we need to understand is that nowadays, not everybody wants to be married. They rather stay single because it doesn't tie them into all the stuff that you have to go through being married. And ladies, I talked about this subject a few weeks ago on a number of platforms about how we live in a society where there is seemingly, I'll use that word, seemingly an effort to emasculate men. And don't let me start talking about this new age of independency with women. I'm all for women doing their thing. Don't get me wrong. I'm all for independent women doing their thing, but I think some of y'all carried a little bit too far. And unfortunately, one of the persons that really drove home a lot of good key points, Brother Kevin Samuels, is no longer with us, but I am, I'll say it alive, I am a supporter of most of what he said, not necessarily all of it. So there are people who don't want to be single, and maybe you don't want to be, I'm certain they don't want to be married. You want to stay single. There's nothing wrong with that if that's what you want to do. Somebody wants to ask me, what about what the Bible said? That's better for a man to marry than to burn. Hey, that is still a true statement. It does not go out of style. However, I have to say, in favor of this new age mindset of single people, if you don't want to conform to the ways that marriage should actually work, stay single. That's just all there's to it. All right, I'm gonna leave that alone. Let's talk about being divorced. Now, a number of you listening to me, you have either gone through a divorce, or you might be going through a divorce, or you know someone that is. So let's talk about it. I think I deal with it from a perspective of, how do you deal with going through a divorce? And the first thing you need to understand is this, is divorce is not necessarily a bad thing. Okay, I said it. As a pastor, I know fundamentally I'm supposed to be anti-divorce, and technically I am anti-divorce. However, I happen to believe, and I'm gonna kind of throw a plug in my book, the decision, should I stay or should I marry? We make some really good points about whether a person should stay in marriage. Let's face it, God did not ordain every marriage. And some of us got married, and there's no compatibility whatsoever. And you stayed in the marriage for the sake of convenience, for children, for money, for this and for that, and so forth and so on. And listen, you're just as unhappy as you want to be. And it doesn't matter if you're two believers or not two believers. The effect is still the same if you're not getting along. Hello, somebody. So if you are in a position where you have gone through a divorce, let me kind of come in a different direction with you. And you know what? You're right. Let me back up a minute. The station is WCEG Network. I probably said it wrong in the beginning. All right, back to station identification here. All right. So as I was saying, life after divorce. Now, let me say this and clarify. The topics and opinions that I am sharing in this particular show are from myself and from the guests, and not necessarily, I guess you could say, sanctioned by the station itself. I hope I got that right. But
you got that right, because that's important, because we want people to know that this is our expressed opinion and not WCEG Network opinion, so that they understand that. But I want to ask, before you jump in the other, you moved a little quick. You mentioned a word that is really what I'm hearing the brothers in the barbershop saying, emasculate. It seemed to, where did it come from, and why is it so rampant now?
Woo! Do you really want to open that Pandora's box?
I do, because I'm telling you, I've been to the last 3 times I've been to the barbershop. That's been the discussion. Guys that have come in and say, "Hey, man, why are you looking down, man? That woman of mine, she's just doing this and trying to take my manhood. I mean, she make more money than I do, and that don't make sense, but I pay all the bills." I mean, it's just so many things that the brothers are saying. And a lot of brothers, I hope the ladies are hearing me, a lot of brothers saying, I don't need to be married. I need just, if she going to be the man and the woman, then I need to go and leave. Let her be the man and woman. She want to work, because she wear the pants, she thinks she's the man. I think that's incorrect. So I need you to kind of cover that for us today.
So my opinion, Emasculate. Let's define it. Define that
Okay.
emasculation. What it's all about.
Okay.
It's the process of trying to strip away from the man. And this is my best definition. From the man, the values, the morals, and the action that he should typically walk in. That's I think a definition that we can all agree on and settle with. Now, where did it come from? My opinion again, it didn't just start. It started way back in slavery. Because during the times of slavery, there was a lot of things that, and that's not the topic of the show today, that happened to men in particular that was designed to strip them of their masculinity. And it continued on. Well, how did it get to the point where it is now? Because over the years, the world accepted the industrial age. And you all know what the industrial age is because you learned it in high school or college. That's where the women's liberation movement came in. And I will say again, you're welcome, sis. I will say again, I support women's rights. I support women advancing. I support the fact that women go a lot of places they couldn't go in times past. What I don't support is women overtaking the position and the roles that I believe are based on biblical scripture and that make for what I consider a balanced community. Everybody can't be a man. Everybody can't do man stuff. Everybody can't be a woman. Everybody can't do woman stuff because we got a problem right there too. Now here's the thing, but this thing that they're doing to men now, making men wear dresses and wear apparel that's relatively close to what appears to be what a woman would typically do. And even in the workplace, you see a lot of women advancing, especially African American women advancing more than your African American men. And that's not by default. That's by design, because there's clearly an effort. Look at your television program. You ever wondered why you see more interracial couples on TV than you see our people and our couples? I mean, I hate to go there with it, guys, but I got to go there with it because America does not like to show a strong black man. They don't. They like to show a black man who is subordinate to some woman. And to me, that is a movement that continues on and on and on until it finally suppresses the man. Let me tell you a story. Let me tell you a true story. The scientists did an experiment some years ago in a village in Africa. True story. This really happened. Look it up. It's on the internet. And what they did was they took a mother elephant, a father elephant, and a baby elephant. And while they were in their habitat, everything was perfectly normal. Everything was fine, period. So they decided to take the father elephant out of the habitat and see exactly what would happen if they did that. Well, lo and behold, when they removed the father, it wasn't long before the baby elephant trampled the village, trampled the villagers, killed a lot of people, and just went haywire because the removal of the male that was necessary took away the discipline necessary in our society. And our society is all too happy to accept that kind of behavior. When you see our communities, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand. In a lot of cases, there is a huge absence of the male in the household. And you know what that does? It creates the problem that we're not talking about. So I am saying that there is a deliberate movement to demasculate men, not just in the external world, as it were, but even in the church, And I want to say and be clear that there is absolutely nothing wrong with women developing, growing, doing their things in society. It's not at all. But I think that we do have to get back to the place and point in time where we recognize the value of the male. And I think for all practical purposes, that's something that we need to address, not just from the world standpoint, but from the church standpoint too. I mean, I will stop short of saying in some cases it may very well be warranted, but it shouldn't be. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Doc, I hope that helped. So let's talk a little bit about life after divorce. If you've ever been through a divorce, and I have, then you know that life has to go on after you divorce. Why do people get divorced? Why do people get divorced? We would take up the whole day discussing why people get divorced. Some people get divorced because they just couldn't get along. Some people get divorced because, let's just say, face it, they should have never been married from the very beginning. Some people get a divorce for financial reasons. All kinds of reasons come up as to why people get a divorce. Divorce is real. Divorce happens. Divorce is widespread. And as the years go by, guess what? The numbers continue to seemingly increase from last I read. So it happens. But here's the bigger picture, or the bigger part. You got to be able to cope with it. Because when you get a divorce, contrary to what you might believe, nobody wins. And I agree, God doesn't necessarily. Divorce was not God's highest order. The highest order of God was marriage continuously and forever and then forever. But you are a fallen man. We are fallen, scheduled, as it were, to be redeemed at some point during our lifetime. But even that doesn't create a void of a human heart, because born again means just that. You become born again, which is a process. So you're going to make bad decisions. I don't like to say mistakes, bad decisions. So when you make bad decisions, sometimes those bad decisions result in divorce. And when it does, contrary to what you believe, she might get the house, the car, the money, or whatever, or he might get the house, the car, the money, or whatever. But guess what? Nobody wins. If you think somebody wins in a divorce situation, you're wrong. Nobody wins. Nobody wins in a divorce. Everybody loses on some level. If it's not spiritual, it's emotional. If it's not emotional, it's financial. But everybody loses in that point, no matter how much they gain. But you can pick yourself up. So if you're listening to us on the Farmer Report, I want to share with you how you can handle and deal with divorce afterwards. Now, don't tell me you don't need to deal with it, because I know people who are divorced and they've been divorced 5-6 years and they still cry over their losses. They still have a moment where they're thinking about the divorce and they cry. So let me help you understand how to deal with it when you go through a divorce. I pray that none of you would ever have to face going through a divorce. It is a very, very, very difficult process. Everybody's mad. Nobody really wants to resolve it in a very good way. And even those who do want to resolve it in a very good way, they still struggle through it. So let me help you figure out ways to kind of get through it. The first thing you got to do is you got to practice some, what I would like to call, acceptance. What does that mean? People generally don't get married assuming that they're going to get a divorce. And divorce is common. It's especially in our world. It is common. And you feel that your marriage is going to last. But the disillusion of your marriage comes as a shock when it ends in a divorce. And it's natural for you to feel that way. What way, you say? Regrets. You wish things had turned out differently. You wish you had never gotten involved, period. You wonder whether you could have done something to prevent it. Was it your fault? Was it their fault? You might also feel that a little bit confused and even in denial, and find divorce is difficult for you to accept. But in spite or despite of all those feelings, the fact still remains: you're divorced. Your marriage has ended. Now, some people remarry. Others don't want nothing else to do with marriage. If not forever, at least for quite some time. Because divorce kind of feels like a final break. And when you hold on to that too tightly, you lose sight on a new vision for your future. So instead, what you have to do, or what we would encourage you to do, is this: accept it. Accept the fact my marriage ended. I gotta move on. That's hard when you're around a bunch of church folk, because they ain't gonna never let you forget that divorce was not God's highest order. I know, because I pastored a bunch of them, period. But you got to understand, you have to deal with it. And acceptance, in my opinion, is the first step. Acceptance doesn't happen overnight. So don't even worry. If you need some time to come to grips with the fact that you are no longer married, but you're divorced, it's okay. It's cool. It's cool. Period. Accept it. The second thing you need to do, give yourself some time. Well, what do you mean by that? Give yourself some time to feel what you feel. I've been divorced, so I know what it feels. Hey, Bishop, God bless. What we got?
You hit that divorce pretty hard there, and you didn't really. You could have lingered a little bit more,
Okay.
because when you talk about divorce, sometimes people say it's like death, and it's a final death. But I think one of the things I want to ask you, Bishop, why is it, especially in the church community, when you go through a divorce, doesn't make a difference who wants a divorce, why is it that the church community, the religious folks, get in your business and try to see what happened? Why is it that they should not be helping you both individually to heal and not take sides?
Because I would make a statement that I cannot quantify, but it is a statement that I totally, honestly believe in, even though I have no scientific proof to prove it whatsoever. So I am going to say circumstantially, most people in church are not born again, they just saved. Born again and saved people act differently toward different things. Saved people don't understand, get out my business. Saved people don't understand it is not mine to deal with something that happened in your life, because I didn't go home with you every day. I didn't sleep in your bed. You don't understand. Two people can be married and come to church. And when they come to church, they could seem like the most wonderful couple. You remember the great prophetess and the great bishop that were married. We ain't gonna call no names. And for a time, the great prophetess and the great bishop were a wonderful couple. They were on television. They looked like the happy, anointed couple. Next thing you know, they punching each other out in the hotel parking lot. I'm just saying, if you don't go home with people, you don't know what their life is outside of church settings.
So but that was a prime example of emasculating your husband. That was a prime example, because that person that I know you talk about, that person wanted to be in charge and wanted to rule over the relationship. And that can't, there are some men that do that. It's not a problem with you being submissive. Men be submissive to the wife be submissive to the husband. But there should be no domineering factor in a relationship when, okay, so if you're the wife and you trying to be the husband and the wife, then who God talking to?
Well, submission is a two-way street. However, we got to understand that there are levels of hierarchy in Scripture. The Bible clearly gives a hierarchical levels in the family unit, period. It amazes me how we hold on to scriptures about faith and prosperity and everything else. We throw out the scriptures when it comes down to hierarchy in marriage. What does the Bible says? The head of, y'all ain't talking to me. The head of the wife, the woman, whatever, is the man. The head of the man is God.
You might need to tell us what that is so we can see it for ourselves.
Okay.
you need to pull that out, because
you could tell them, some of them still ain't gonna believe it.
They ain't gonna believe it anyway, but we want you to because and what makes, because you might make more money than me or you might be more educated than me, that still does not make you the boss. Maybe you're the pastor of the church and I'm a deacon. How does that work? And I think that's a whole nother subject by itself. There are some women pastors that have husbands that are deacons and just members of the ministry, and you don't tell those women that when you go home, you're not the pastor. You put on your dress to go cook that man some breakfast.
Well, we don't even want to talk about the spiritual side of that.
Oh my God. Touch
We
on it a
don't
little
even
bit.
want to talk about. We don't even want
Touch
to
on
talk
it a
about
little
the
bit.
demonic side of that.
Touch on it a little bit. Go ahead. Talk to him. We want to
So
inform folks.
yeah, and we don't want to bash, and we're not going to bash anybody. I'm not going to say we don't want to. We're not going to bash anybody. To find that passage though, it's in Ephesians 5:21-33. And it's amazing because it's 21-33. That's a lot of verses that discuss and talk about the responsibility and the headship of the man in the home. We live in a society where society don't even recognize the headship of the man in the home. Look how many pictures on television we watch, movies we watch, where society shows the man as the lesser and not the greater. One of the reasons that I'm saying that, you say what you want to say. Well, you say, well, times have changed, and therein lies the problem, because not every change that has come over time has been an issue for us. Some things have been changed that should have never been changed, period. So we're talking about, the hierarchy of the husband being the head of the wife being the head of the children, and God being head of us all. Now, those of us who are, quote, born again and not just saved, we understand the value of balance. We understand the balance of being in a position to where you don't, quote unquote, abuse that opportunity, but you walk in the meekness of what it's really all about. And so you got to deal with that. And I understand all too well that it happens to a lot of brothers, like you said. So I hope I answered that. And I go back to dealing with your after divorce situation. If you're divorced, you need to be able to cope with it. Now, the next thing you got to do is give your feelings some space. Bishop Farmer mentioned a few things a minute ago, because when you're divorced, you do have feelings. There's pain, there's betrayal, there's sadness, there's fear, there's uncertainty, there's doubt, there's contempt, there's disgust, there's hostility, there's rage, there's grief, there's loss, there's regret, there's relief, there's peace. Man, there are so many emotions that's going on after your divorce that it's amazing. Tell your friends what you want to tell them. You can go around and tell them, man, I'm cool. I'm all right. I should have been out of that anyway. But when you get behind closed doors by yourself, having gone through it myself, it becomes a moment that you think about. And you start to ask yourself the hard questions, some of the questions that you cannot answer. So here's the point. If you're divorced, whether recently or in times past, you should give yourself some space. How long will it take you to heal from that hurt, from that pain? I don't know. I have no idea. Everybody's timing is different, all right? Now, here's another thing. If you got children involved, you need a plan to co-parent. That's right. You don't just arbitrarily say, hey, it's my son, your son, we're going to do whatever. No, you need a plan. You need a specific plan, because in the beginning of most divorces, don't nobody want to play fair. So you need a plan to ensure that you're playing fair. You're not putting the child on them too much, period. Everybody is sharing, the husband and wife is sharing the burden. Here's something else you need to do if you're divorced. Keep calm and try your very best to communicate with the person that you're divorced from. Now, for a lot of us, that's hard. It's very, very difficult when you're first divorced. It's easy when you don't have any kids because you don't really have a reason to communicate. But when you got kids involved, it's a real line, thin line between being able to talk to that person and not being able to talk to that person. And then, of course, you already know you're not going to be able to get a word in or get through to them because they're still angry like you're still angry. But you got to find a way to communicate. You got to find a way. And you need to build your support system. You get your family to surround you. That's the time that your family needs to come around, throw their arms around you every now and then and say, hey, we support you. And Bishop, you talked about the church folk. For y'all church folk that's listening to me, that's the time you need to be throwing your arms around your brother and sharing with them about how you feel this and how much time did I allow myself to grieve. Okay, my wife died about 8 years ago. The truth of the matter is it was a little bit different because I knew she was going to die. She had a terminal sickness, cancer. So instead of me waiting until the end, every single day for 3 months, they gave her 6, she lasted 3. Every single day for 3 months, I grieved. I took time every single day at some point to get in my car and drive. And there was a song by William Murphy, Our God Reigns. I played that song every single day. Yes, anticipatory grief. I played that song every single day. I get in my car, I drive for 45 minutes an hour, I cry, I listen to the song. I never let them see me cry, but I cry. And when I finish crying, I go back and take care of them again because he had terminal cancer. So if you have that opportunity, because not everybody has the anticipatory grief opportunity. If you have that opportunity, then you can, you know what? You can prepare yourself. And that way it won't be so bad in the end if you know it's going to come. Now, I did everything to, talk faith and believe and trust and all that during that process. However, I took the time during that time to do it. And even the day of the funeral, I had to preach the funeral myself on my way to the funeral. That same William Murphy, God Reigns, was playing in my car, and I cried like a baby. But when I stepped in that church door alongside my good brother, Bishop Keith Foreman, and my good sister, Bishop Brenda English, all my tears had essentially dried up. I was ready for the moment. Now, if those don't work after the person has passed away, you haven't had a chance to process it, well, I'm going to encourage you to get my book, Grief Coping. I'm taking advantage of this show, Doc. As you can see, you go on Amazon and get it. It'll help you cope with the grieving that you go through. And of course, after your divorce, make sure you reconnect with yourself.
That's very important, Bishop. Let me just jump in there because you're a prime example of that. How you are able to bounce back, how you stood and preached and ministered. I think it was just extraordinary. And then you see other people that have gone through a divorce and they mad at the world. They try to slander the person and they don't mean no harm. I think they just hurt and they don't know how to define that hurt. And that makes a difference. So, but
Doc, not to cut you off, but I mean, here's the thing. In so many cases, people, when they go through divorce, they feel like they have been cheated, have been treated unfairly. And you know what? Truth is, in a lot of cases, they have.
Right.
Not every divorce is warranted. There are some people, man, you can do everything in your power to please her or him.
Right.
And it doesn't matter to them. And you wind up getting divorced and you angry because you wasted 5 years of your life working 3 jobs, trying to spend money you ain't got, trying to please somebody you don't even like.
So would you say then, Bishop, that person, if you spend your time trying to please somebody, is that person not already pleased with themselves? Is there a connection? So when you're in a marriage, you're trying to spend all your time trying to please that person. Should that be your responsibility, or should that person come already in whole and pleased of themselves already?
So, yes, I agree with you, but the unfortunate thing is that most people don't. And then, I mean, man, if I got on this subject, Doc, I don't know, man, we won't even deal with this death thing. I mean, the truth of the matter is the most human beings are in and of themselves selfish. And in relationship, if you're not thinking when, you're putting the other person at a disadvantage. You're putting them at a disadvantage because it's just only going to be so long till the person decides, I'm not winning in this game. I'd like to at least get a field goal. And then therein lies the problem. 2 people, both of them doing what they want to do, which is the biggest problem in marriage. Everybody want to do their own thing and not do it God's way. God has a plan for marriage, period.
Okay. Now, I got to jump in there again. The old song, one of my favorite singers, R&B singers of all times, his name was Teddy Pendergrass.
Okay.
He talked about 50-50 love. And he said, sometime it's 60-40, sometime it's 70-30, but the key is to have a 50-50. Where is there a 50-50?
Yeah, and you know what? Here's my thoughts on that. Idealistically, yes, but follow me on this. Follow me on this. Not everybody wants the same thing. Because when people talk about 50-50, sometimes they try to take it to a place where they say, well, you pay 50% of the bill, I pay 50% of the bill. You cook sometime, I cook sometime. You clean sometime, I clean sometime. And they go into that. Somebody said, why not 100? All of that is still relative. You know why that's relative? Because not everybody wants the same thing. First of all, you got to understand what my 50, if you want to talk 50-50 or 100, that doesn't matter to me. If you want to talk about that though, you need to know what my 100 is. You need to know what my 100 is. Because if you say 100 and 100 means we both paying the bills, we both doing this, we both doing that, that ain't my 100. That's not my 100, because not every man cares whether or not you help him pay the bill. Not every man cares whether or not you cook or you clean or you do this. So you can say, well, we're doing 100, but in his mind, you're not. Because the one thing he's been begging you for the most, respect, you don't give him. So guess what? Your quantitative 100 isn't really 100. It's 100 in your mind, but it's not 100 in his mind. Because until you give that other person what they need, you can't quantize. You can't. It's not there. Everybody doesn't want the same thing. What you need to find out is, honey, what is it that you need? And one of the worst places to be in is in a place with somebody who's giving you what they want to give you, not what you need. Do I need to move on to another subject?
Oh, that's good there, Bishop. That's good. I feel you helping some people right there and understanding the concept. You helping some people because that's just after so long you understand that it's it's not a 50-50. It's giving that person what they need and you're getting what you need. It's when you're not getting what you need that causes that 50-50 to be one side and lopsided. And that's very important to know.
Somebody said, Doc, maybe they are giving all that they have. I'll take issue with that. Because if what you have is not what he's asking, you still ain't giving enough.
Ooh.
You giving him what you have, what you want him to have, but you still not giving him enough. You're giving him what you have. Marriage requires a meeting of the mind, a meeting of the heart, a meeting of coming together saying, I might not be able to have this. They said the man said, silver and gold, I have none, but such as I have, I'm going to give it to you. He gave the man what the man needed, not what the man necessarily asking for. He said, then y'all shouldn't be together. And that very well may be true. But you know what the problem is with that statement? Just because she or he is not giving them what they have doesn't mean they shouldn't be together. What it does mean is maybe one or the other needs to consider their hearts and make a change. The problem in many marriages is stubbornness, no compromise. That people want to keep doing the same thing they've been doing and not change and meet the needs of the other person. So it's not a matter of them not needing to be together. Because what's the difference between the time you got together with that person and the time you're thinking about leaving that person? If you're with them 10 years, you mean tell me you put 10 years into a relationship that you didn't need to be together and you didn't get anything out of it at any point in time? No. Somebody say you might have a 10-gallon hat and the other might only have a 2-gallon hat. Well, I'm not sure how to even answer that. Not unless they're trying to wear my hat. my hat might be too big, so I'm not sure about that one. I apologize. I'm stumped on that one.
Bingo, right. So it depends on that. But I think you really hit the nail on the head, and that's one of the reasons why this was a passionate subject. Because when I keep going to barbershop and I'm hearing my brothers, suffering. I'm hearing, they're saying different things. I'm like, wow, the brothers, it's true. There's been, conversation that men that are trying to be faithful husbands and be good to their wives, they're not getting what they want. So then here comes an open door to something that they don't need. So then they end up being, being married but living single.
Now, here's something for you to think about. It's, in some cases, a matter of the perspectives of every generation. Now, let's think about this. I'm 62 years old, right? And after my wife died, I'll be honest, that was 8-9 years ago. After I kind of got past that, I dated someone that was 29. I think at that time I was 52. So I was over twice their age. It didn't work. It was very short-lived. There's a difference in the values and the difference in the times, the things that we understood, it just was too much for me. Now, here's what I'm saying. If you want a wife that understands how to be submissive, love her husband, walk in the role and function, and still be independent, so to speak, and take care of business, you ain't going to find her in a younger generation. You're going to have to find her in our generation and beyond. Because what I found is that most, except for the silly women that the Bible speaks of, most of the women in our generation and back were raised by their mothers and fathers, and they know how to be wives. Now, the younger generations, you got to think about this. We got grandmothers now that's 29 years old who were raised by 29 years old. They know very little, if anything, about being a mother. So you can't possibly be a mother and you can't possibly be a wife if nobody taught you that. And sometimes we expect too much of people that they're not capable of being able to do. And I feel sorry for the young fellas because young fellas don't understand. They just doing what they know how to do. They know how to twerk. They know how to, do a whole bunch of other stuff. And some of them even know how to be domestic enough to prepare a good meal. I don't take that from them at all. But I mean, I'd say relatively and generally speaking, that's not necessarily the case. And so we have to understand that there's a breakdown in the generations that they simply just haven't been trained. And we sometimes expect them to do stuff that they haven't been trained to do. It's sad they don't want to be trained, some of them, but it's the fact. It's just where it is. So let's move on to, dealing with the death of your spouse. I mean, I can talk on that too, because like I said, I had that happen to me. And Bishop asked me the question about how did I handle it. Again, I agreed before it happened. Some people don't have that experience. I do. And it was difficult for me, but I did it. And I'm telling you that you can too. The second thing is, at that time in your life, you need support. Now, for me, I didn't have the support necessarily because I lived in a whole different state. My family was back in Georgia. I was in North Carolina, and I was there by myself in this big old house, and it was just me. And I didn't know what to do with myself. You had thoughts. You try to figure it all out. There were moments when I would go downstairs to my den and sit on my sofa and cross my legs and cry to face the reality that this is it. It's over. No coming back from that. And I had to be honest, I asked the Lord why. I mean, at 40, how old she was, I think 45 years old, in perfect health one day, come home the next day with what I considered a minor ache. And within a space of 30 days, it was announced that she had terminal cancer with 6 months to live. That's a lot. So I had to digest all that. And here's something else for you. During those times afterwards, don't even try to make any big decisions. Period. It's too much to try to make big decisions. Don't make any big changes in your life. No changing your job, no changing religion, no changing none of that. I stayed, that time we lived in a 5-bedroom house, which was way too big for me. But I didn't change it right away. I had 5 cars parked in the yard. I didn't change any of that right away. I didn't change anything right away after her death. I just waited to kind of soak it all in. Because you know what? You can't make rational and logical decisions when you are trying to get past that person that passed in your life. Thank you for that person that passed in your life. And let me encourage you, by all means, get you some counseling. If you feel the need, get you some professional counseling. Now, I believe in my brothers, pastors, and my sister, pastors, but I really feel like there's some things that you need more than being hit over the head with a scripture. You need some professional help because you got to understand you're not all spirit, you're part human. And as a part of you need to understand and identify with humanly what you're dealing with right now. It ain't all spirit. You can't shout that back. You can't speak in tongue that back. Your pain, your hurt is your pain and your hurt, period. And so I encourage you, get some professional counsel. Here's another thing for you. Take care of yourself. Take care of yourself. Say, what do you mean by that? I knew someone that lost their spouse, right? When their spouse passed, it was like they passed. They didn't accept it. They sat around and didn't want to do anything. I have a friend of mine right now. He's in love with a young lady, but her husband died tragically in a motorcycle accident about 12 years ago. He loves this young lady to life, but they can't seem to get into a relationship. Why? Because 12 years later, she still hadn't moved on. 12 years later, she's still dealing with that as though it can change. I don't mean to sound crazy, but when a person dies, they're dead. There's nothing that you're going to be able to do about that whatsoever to bring them back. It's just not going to happen. And the truth of it is, if they were here to tell you, they'd probably tell you, go on with your life. Anyway, it's complicated, grief. I like that word, complicated. It really is complicated. But being complicated doesn't make it unsolvable. You have to do what you have to do. I want to bring my grief coping journal that I wrote, that you can get it on Amazon. But I wrote that for that reason, for over the person said complicated, because it is complicated. No two people deals with it alike. And people fill you up with scriptures and they fill you up with the Lord is going to make a way and, she's in a better place and, all kinds of stuff. They mean well about it. They do. They really mean well about it. However, let's just be honest and put it where it was. It don't make you feel any better. My mother died 3 years ago. My mother and I were very close. My mother was the most fabulous born-again Christian that I've ever known in my life. 3 years ago, she died. My mother prayed for hundreds of people, literally a day. Spoke in tongues, like Paul said, more than all of us. But when she passed away, after much praying that she would get better, and she did. Whoever that person that typed that on that complicated grief, that was a complicated grief. It was a complicated grief. Very complicated. No two situations are alike. So when you're grieving and depression causes you to push your own personal needs to the side, you got to continue to take care of yourself. You got to eat. I know people that stop eating because somebody died and they couldn't handle it. They stopped eating. Guys, I get it. It makes us do certain things, be a certain way, but you cannot forget you are here. They are not. You have to continue to live. You got to eat. You got to exercise. You got to get the proper amount of sleep. And you got to maintain a social life. You got to go out. I'm not telling you to be buck wild and party, any of that. I'm telling you that you need a social outing, period, whether it's church or whatever you have. And if you need to, get a support group because you're not the only one that's lost somebody. There's a lot of people out there, myself and Bishop and other people. We've lost people as well. And allow people to come into your space and to help you get past that moment. Nobody wants to lose a loved one. Nobody does. But when it happens, it happens. And can we face reality, guys, that we all gonna go? Let me tell you a true story. My father and I were very close. My dad died in 1988. I have the honor of every year on my birthday, on May the 20th, I have the honor of thinking about my daddy. Why? Because they buried my father on my birthday, period. Now, my dad and I was very close. We were very, very close. So my dad says to me, it was a Friday. It was a Thursday. I was scheduled to fly to a little place called Skokie, Illinois, to stay at the Purple Palace, because at that point I worked for a college and they sent me out for training. 8 minutes, thank you. They sent me out for training. Well, I get out to the place. My dad took me to the airport, and my dad said to me on the way, he said, son, if something ever happens to me, I want you to step up and take over the family. Now, I have 2 other brothers, one older, one younger. And I said to my father, Dad, I don't want you to talk like that. You're going to be around for a long time. My father said, and I quote, hush, boy. You don't know how long I'm going to be around. I'm telling you, if something happens to me, I want you to take care of the family. I said, yes, sir, Dad. Can we talk about something else? He said, no, I want to finish. Now, this was Thursday, the true story. Now, Friday, he takes me to the airport. I fly to Skokie, Illinois. I stay at the Omni Hotel downtown. I think Purple Palace, one of them. But anyway, wherever I stayed, we went out to dinner. I came back. There was a note at the front desk that said, please call home immediately. So I called home. Nobody answered. I called my mother's cell phone. And my mother said, you need to come home tomorrow. Your dad has been hospitalized. So I catch the next plane out the next morning. I get to the hospital. I go and I see my dad. He's laying in the bed. He's strapped to the bed. And I'm saying to myself, wow, he was trying to tell me something. He's still alive. So my mom's in, and I told my mom, I said, I got to take a walk. I went for a walk, probably 2 miles or so down the road, 2 miles back. But I cried the whole time because God had given me this inner thing that my father was about to leave. So when I got back to the hospital, I went to my father's room. I had already sent the ministers over the night before to pray with him and, make sure he repented. And he was good in the event that happened. And I questioned him. He couldn't talk. He had tubes. I questioned him, about the event. He said, yeah, I accept Christ as my savior. Went on whole 9 yards. All right, 5 minutes later, I go out. I tell my mom to go in to see him. She does. My mom comes back out. I walk in to see him. I hold him by his hand. He looks at me, and one single tear rolled down his right cheek. Didn't say a word because he's in tube. One tear rolled down his cheek. When he did that, he took a deep breath, and he died right there while I was holding his hand. He tried to tell me what I did not want to accept. That is, everybody that you know, the reality is we all gonna pass away. It's just a matter of when. And when your loved one does, you gotta be prepared for it. Gotta be prepared for it. And how do you be prepared for it? You start training your mind now. Start training your mind to understand it is a progression of life. You're born, you live, you die. And prayerfully, as we Christians believe, you go to be with God. See how that works? But to feel that you're going to be around forever is false. It's not going to happen. So that said, I got 5 minutes to go. And I'm very, very thankful for you all coming to listen on this platform with the Bishop Keith Farmer report. Because every week we've had something wonderful, exciting. So to recap, today we've talked about widows, being a widow, talked about divorce, talked about being single, and we talked about being married. A little bit, touch base on a little bit of all of them. It's our prayer, I believe, that you got something out of it. I don't know if Bishop Farmer's going to pop back in on us or not, but in the event that he doesn't, on behalf of Bishop Dr. Keith Farmer and the Farmer Report, I just want to say thank you, and thank you for listening to us. You know what? And for those of you that put something in the chat, thank you for engaging us. That's awesome. I mean, we love it when people engage us. We may not always agree on things, and that's part of life. Teeth will fall out with tongue, even though we didn't fall out. But we may not agree. But I think there's something to be learned from you and there's something to be learned from me. What is my social media website? How to purchase books? Okay. So, of course, Bishop Farmer's social media on Facebook is Bishop Keith A. Farmer. Mine is Will Smith, Atlanta. You can purchase any one of my books. I got several of them. I got this one, The Realities of What You Need to Know. What's that? After You Get Married. Yeah, them stuff you need to know after you get married. This is the one before, what you need to know before you get married. And of course, this is the Grief Coping Journal. And this is one of the decisions. Should I stay or should I leave? And I got about 15 more on there. Just go to Amazon.com. Go to the book section. Type in my name, Dr. Willard, Willard Smith, or Dr. Willard L. Smith. And all of my books will pop up and you can order them. And thank you in advance for even asking. You can find me on TikTok under that same name, Dr. Willard L. Smith. You can find me on YouTube, Dr. Willard L. Smith. Facebook, Will Smith, Atlanta. Instagram, although I don't do much with Instagram, but it's there. I do have a platform under Bishop Dr. Willard L. Smith. I hope that answers, and thank you for caring enough to even answer that, to even ask that question. Bishop Dr. Farmer also has a book on Amazon entitled The Heart of a Servant. You want to get that book. Everybody talking about being the greatest in the world. No, you need to learn how to serve. And he has written a book entitled The Servant's Heart. Go to Amazon, type his name, Bishop Dr. Keith A. Farmer. The book will pop up. I promise you it's going to bless you. Because you know what? They asked Jesus, they said, which one of us is the greatest? And Jesus said, the greatest of you is the servant. Not the one with the bling, not the one with the biggest car, the biggest house, but the servant. Bishop Farmer wrote that book. Go get that book. I got my copy. Amen. Repeat the big. Okay. Dr. Keith's book is entitled A Servant's Heart. I got a copy, but it's in the other room and I can't go get it. But it's A Servant's Heart, A Servant's Heart, A Servant's Heart by Bishop Dr. Keith Farmer. Amazon.com. Amazon.com. You got to get that book. If you don't get, you're welcome. You're welcome. Get that book. It's going to teach you how to be. Listen, Bishop has been a servant all his life. 1 minute. All right, I got to go. Bishop has been a servant all his life. I've known him now for, I don't know what, 40 years. And that's all I've known him to be, serving people. Some of them wasn't even worthy of him serving, but he served him anyway. Hey, guys, I got to go. Thank you again for listening to the Farmer Report right here on WCEG Network. Thank God for our engineer who always does such a fabulous job. We love her so much and we appreciate it. Hey, until next 2 weeks from now, not next Thursday, but the Thursday after, come right back here, 5 o'clock. Got some more good stuff for you. I promise you're going to love us. God bless. Feed your faith. Starve your doubts to death. Shalom.